Okay, so last video we'll talk about design parameters, etc. This is about features what I'd love to see in a rifle. So I'll take the best of what has been proven in battle rifles, that is, reliable battle rifles. So the features, this is what I'd like. I would like something that comes in at relatively lightweight. And when I say that, you know, upper limit maximum bear rifle would be 3.6 kilos. That's not heavy, but it's heavier than what you'd want by the time you add the other things to it, a full magazine of ammunition, etc. So we don't want the longest barrel in the world, or we don't want the longest overall length. So barrels with a maximum overall length of maybe 22 inches, but probably more likely 20 inch, as low as maybe 18 inch, but I don't believe that's where we want to go. Actually, you know, even barrels as far as 24 inches, depending on the design of the firearm. But we still need to keep that weight down. So barrel equals steel, which equals weight. So it's something to take into account. Okay. I would like 10 shot integral magazine, or 10 shot double stacked, and that's double stacked for both rifles for a reason, for both configurations for a reason. Yes, detachable magazine is 100% an option. It's probably the highest option. But I want to be able to use stripper clips. Stripper clips, like I've talked about, reduces weight, reduces cost of manufacture, and that's right. Whether you load, and the reason for a double stack magazine is you can use stripper clips then. If the magazine's a little bit wider than the standard round itself, where the top feed lips are, you should be able to come vertically down the magazine and use the stripper to push those rounds into the magazine, or the magazine well. And then when you release your thumb and the spring pushes them up and it separates the rounds to where they go, they're going to be held by the feed lips in a double stack magazine, where it's going to be very hard, or a lot harder, to stripper feed a single column magazine into a rifle, because then the rifle's going to basically, it limits the rifle. Okay, so it's either A, the rifle has a modification for the stripper clip, or B, the magazine does. So using polymer and lightweight materials wherever possible. Now, do we go bolt action? Do we go a conventional rifle with the stock trigger group, magazine group out in front, and then the receiver and barrel in front of that? Or do you go bullpup configuration? I'm open to either or. Bullpups obviously have the advantage of a little bit more compact, and for the overall length you can have a longer barrel, which will give you more velocity, which I think is something that is important for Australia in particular. Okay, we want a multi-purpose rifle. Yes, we want to be able to engage up close. We want to be able to defend ourselves against hunting life-threatening animals, but also use it as a hunting rifle, because we are a volunteer militia. We would have to supply our own kit, and we want it to be as multifunction as possible. Modular, multi-purpose. So that means hunting, target work, defense, defense for animal, and, you know, nasty two-legged things. So, and be capable of engaging an enemy that's shooting back at you. Okay, so this is where I think barrel length does play a role. So a bullpup potentially, and of course, a lot of the Americans who grew up on the AR platform and conventional rifles, etc., generally tend to be anti-bullpup. Okay, it's just a matter of training. It all depends geographically where you come from. If you grew up with AR platforms, you're going to like AR platforms. Okay, just like you guys love your M1 Garands, Germans and people from Europe tend to love Mausers, and people from the British Empire tend to love Lee Enfields. That's just the way it goes, okay? So we can't make everybody happy, and this is about Australia. So since the 1990s, Australia has used the bullpup configuration, and when you talk to a lot of military guys, if you're not a gun shooter, you join the military, you're not a gun shooter, and you join up to a civilian militia, and the general consensus is get the bullpup and you're trained on that bullpup, that's all you're going to know, so it doesn't matter. And as for another feature would be ambidextrous. So instead of having for mass production costs and mass production, I believe having a straight pull with an ejection port that you can change from one side to the other, or one that flings vertically or flings down, is a good idea. Ideally, I think it'd be great if you could make the brass eject downwards, but it's probably also hard to feed, so it comes down, so it feeds from the bottom, or it feeds down. There's other options. If you had a bullpup design, you could potentially have magazines or ammunition that's fed from on top, and the barrel sits lower on the firearm, and it's ejected downwards. Then you have gravity assisting ejection, you have a gravity assisting feeding. I think that's a very good idea, and quite a few firearms that the Commonwealth have used, which is Australia, have used those features, and they tend to be very well liked and very reliable. So that's something that could be looked at. The magazine could also act, or you could have a blast shield between the magazine and your cheek, but then that could act as a cheek rest. Okay, so you could have a nice low linear barrel straight line receiver to the butt, and then you have a higher cheek piece. The magazine could be incorporated into the cheek piece. Okay, what else? Okay, straight pull. When I'm saying straight pull, I believe something, whether it's a semi-automatic that's got the little interrupter lever option. So then effectively you could have a semi-automatic rifle that you're charging the first round, and you could have, if it's a straight pull, I don't see a reason why you couldn't have a cocking lever on either side, or one cocking lever that you adjust or unscrew and just change the sides on it, so then anybody could use it. If the rounds eject downwards, then that's not an issue for ejecting right or left. Or you could also have a changeable bolt head for right or left hand shooting. There's different options, whether you have a little screw in one side of the receiver like a Lee Enfield, and the rim of the cartridge, as it's been pulled back by the ejector, hits the little screw in the receiver and it flings it out the opposite side. Or B, you have like the plunger ejector, like on an M16, I believe Remington 700s have, Howers have it, and depending on which way you want to eject it, you just have a different bolt head with the ejector in the opposite side. I think that's a very good way to go, a changeable bolt head. And if you have changeable bolt heads, that also means you can change between the base diameter of a cartridge. So you can have 5.56, 7.62 by 39 or Grendel size, and then you've got your standard 308 size bolt heads, and then you could potentially have a Magnum 375 Holland and Holland Magnum family based cartridges as well, you know. So they're all options as well. Open sight standard, a long sight radius. The longest sight radius you can possibly get with a peep sight as close to the rear of the receiver or as close to the shooter's eye as possible, I think is fantastic. Even if the if the rear sight just folds out of the way, that would be great. Everybody should learn to use open sights first, and then it's a great backup. And then obviously with these days it's just a no given. You have Picatinny rail system along the top of the receiver, along the top of the handguard. So and keep all that linear too. The top of the receiver and the handguard is equal. That just seems to be common and just the thing to do these days. And if you notice here with these bullpups, I forgot to look at that. If you look at all the modern rifles, they are very linear. Just all compared to like a 303 and conventional old rifles where that's the linear motion there, and then they kick down for the butt. Okay, and that's to raise the sight picture in line with your face, and while the butt's sitting on your shoulder. So these types of firearms, you keep a nice linear straight motion that reduces recoil, controls muzzle jump, and they just raise the sights higher. Okay, so that's a no-brainer as well. Some of the states around Australia that don't allow pistol grips, okay, if we have something like this where the pistol grips seems to be joined to the actual stock in another part, whether it's rearwards or forwards, that seems to get around that. So maybe have that little feature, okay, just to make it compliance the whole way around Australia, 10 shot. So I do really like the idea of a bullpup, like, you know, nice long barrel in a decent cartridge like 308 6.5 Creedmoor. That is going to allow you to reach out quite a long ways, get the maximum performance out of that medium size cartridge case, and yeah, so obviously threaded muzzle would come standard, so then, you know, and also multi-caliber. Okay, so I think a mini action, very short action to cover cartridges up to and a little bit longer than 223. So yes, give that little bit extra room to allow the best cartridge that maybe we don't even know yet, and have the projectile seated out longer. Same with the short action. Lots of people for target shooting love short actions. Yes, I understand the reasons. They say that's because it gives you a stiff, it's shorter for the same dimensions, so it becomes stiffer, more inherent accuracy. I understand where you're coming from, but it also means projectiles are sitting further deeper down inside the case, and you're giving up potential power. What we need is as much power out of the size and the weight of the firearm we can get. So I think a medium size, or just even one action length, which would cover cartridges from 308 to maybe 300 Winchester Magnum size, is what you'd potentially want. And then that way, instead of having a 308 or a lot of 7mm 08, 260 Remington, or you know, 284 Winchester, things like that, a lot of those cartridges are handicapped. And even some of the short magnums, you know, they're still handicapped of their potential by the length of the projectile. Same with even your standard 308, you know, or the Creedmoor or 260 Remington, something along those lines. You have to, it's a compromise about bullet overall length to action length, where if you go that longer action, you can seat those projectiles right out there. And if you're after maximum performance, you're not limited by the action or magazine anymore, you can seat them right out. So for instance, a classic would be the 375 Ruger. In a standard length action, this is made to work in the standard length action of, say, the 270 or a 3006. But the bullets are seated like right down here. There's over half the cartridge is inside the cartridge case, taking up all of that room. If you have a longer magazine and a longer action length, now you can have this projectile seated in not much further than that and gain a whole bunch more space. That amount of volume, basically from the bottom ring, if you can see that, to the top ring, that much more volume, you know. So that, with a given that will make cartridges more efficient as well. So yeah, I would like three action lengths. I think would be great, fantastic. A mini action, a medium action, which would be 308 to 300 Win Mag, and then a magnum action, which is made to take the ultra mag size cases, 416 Rigby's full length 375 Holland and Holland length cases, but also be able to seat the projectiles way out. Okay, so then what you've got is you've effectively got a 50 cal Barrett or a 50 cal rifle in the lightest weight package that you can get, you know, within reason. And 50 cals is just, they're too excessive, they're too heavy, they're too big. Where if you look at what some of the long range shooters are doing with 375s, 416s and 338s, they are giving performance that it's not the same foot-pounds of energy as a 50 cal Browning, but it gives you more than enough, more than what you need, potential to punch holes through body armor and light armored vehicles well beyond 1,000 meters, and be good enough for point aiming at a certain target out to 1,800 to 2,000 meters. So that might be an area target, or, you know, hitting a car, very close to hitting a person or hitting a person-sized target at that range. But that gives you extreme capabilities. Even if that's only putting that person's, you can aim good enough to put some rounds very close by and very near misses, and then you're going to drop those people's heads down, you know. And if you've got some accurate fire coming in at those ranges, they're going to stay down. Every time you see movement, boom, send another one in, and it just kicks up dirt. Like I say, a train wreck. You know, that could be part of your strategy. Your strategy isn't even to hit them, but it's to cause a train wreck on the ground. Hit a tree nearby that hits so hard that they go, oh my God, I don't want to pop my head up. Hit a vehicle hard that they go, oh shit, and they got to get the hell out of there. You know, so yeah. There's obviously, I can go on for more, and the video will end up being an hour long, but, you know, depending on where you put the magazine and pistol grip and trigger grip, that's going to dictate how complex the trigger assembly is, how much it's going to cost to make, how reliable it's going to be, lock times, etc. So lock times come into accuracy, especially at long range, but these are civilian rifles. They're a marksman rifle, so we want them to be relatively accurate. They don't have to be precision, okay? That's when you're stepping into designated marksman, snipery sort of stuff. They don't have to be that, but potentially they could be built into that. But off the shelf, run of the mill, they just got to be general, you know, potential for 30, 35 mil groups at 100. Better than that with a good shooter and good ammunition. and the sky's the limit with a custom built thing. Okay, so ideally the constraints are you need it light, cheap, mass produced, and reliable, and very modular. Okay, so thank you.